All right. Hello and welcome to the tips and tricks video for Excel form reporting. We're going to be taking a look at the Excel form report functions in PC-DMIS using an existing template as well as creating a custom template to report to. So to start off, I have here a short little program just inspecting these 8 holes on the top of our demo block and reporting the XYZ locations and diameters of each. In order to put these into an Excel form report, I have to have, of course, the dimensions in my PC-DMIS program. And then, of course, at the end of the program, when I am ready to report, I'll have to insert the Excel form report command. This, of course, can be found under the Insert Report Command menu. And right here, we have Excel form reports. Clicking on this will open a separate window for dealing with the Excel templates, which, of course, you can access through the command once you've created it. In order to create it, though, you need to provide it with an ID. You can see here our default Excel _ form 1 ID. It's the typical naming convention. And then, of course, you also need to select a template. Now, there are a good deal of existing templates in here, as you can see. So I might, for example, grab AS9102. If I'm looking to do a Form 3, for example, as a typical report I might want to populate. When I select this template, you can see here, it will populate with the Excel template that is built into PC-DMIS. This template can be found in the default location in PC-DMIS under the public documents folder where all the user files for PC-DMIS are stored by default. And specifically in the templates folder. See here, we are in the PC-DMIS version I currently have under Excel form report and templates, and all of my templates are listed. Of course, this template comes with PC-DMIS by default, and you can see here most of these fields have been filled out to automatically report, and it has a data area marked in yellow. This data area is what will populate with the dimensions from our program. So anytime that I run this and have it print to this Excel form report, all of the included dimensions will be put in here. You can see what dimensions will be included by going to the Data tab. And of course, you can see here, I have 8 dimensions with 4 axes each, so they are all reported here. These can be checked and unchecked by hand, so you can choose whether or not you want them reported. And of course, in the top right here, I have the function to report out of tolerance or intolerance only as a secondary function. That said, back to the form itself. While we do have the data area configured, you can see I have a few boxes here that have these italicized fields in them. These italicized fields are simply inputs from this bar on the left here. If I want to customize this form in any way, I can simply select, for example, say the part name input, and just click and drag that into whatever field I wish, and it will put it in there on the template for me. The template fields here marked in red are these 3 trace fields that currently do not exist in my program, these being part name, part ID for serial number, and FAI number for FAI report number. So if I do want to include these, I will have to put these trace fields in my program. So let's do that to get this functional. I'll do this at the beginning of my program where you might typically want to input any trace fields. So we can find these under the statistics commands. And in this case, we are looking for the part name as a trace field. So we'll call it part name. And a message input part name. Save that one. and a second trace field, in this case for the part ID, which will be our serial number. So we'll say part ID. And lastly, we have the FAI report number, and this will be denoted in our case as FAI underscore number. And I'll just have FAI number in there. All right, now that those trace fields exist, I'm going to go back down to the end of my program and resume the Excel form report. We'll go back into the menu for it, select that AS9102 form. And now, of course, those three trace fields that were not existing in my program now exist, and you can see they're no longer marked in red. Now, you do not have to run with these trace fields, of course. Again, you can modify this as you wish. It is easy enough to add your own trace field as applicable and simply click and drag into the respective box. So easy to modify if needed. But at this point, that should be all I need to get this template running. We do have Form 1 and Form 2 in here as well, if needed. Of course, Form 3 is the most typical for FAI, so we'll have that in our program here. And then, of course, we have our form, but I'd like to put it somewhere and name it. Those settings are found in the report settings at the bottom here. And when you open this up, you get three main things. The folder to which this will be saved, which you can manually specify. The naming convention for your report. The default is to pull the part name from the program, the serial number from the trace fields, and the current date and time from the system. That way, anytime we save our results, as long as the time is, within a minute, we will get a new report each time. You can, of course, customize these. So if that's not to your liking, you can change these. Do note that you can put trace fields in here. So if you want a custom name, trace fields are a good solution for that. We can also choose the output type. The default here is going to be Excel because, of course, we are loading Excel templates for the report in the first place. So Excel is our default output. But you can also choose from CSV for a more plain text report, or a text output, which will be delimited by tab characters between each box. Additionally, we have a few checkboxes for various options at the bottom. Firstly, we have the show report function. This will simply open up the Excel report once the program finishes populating it and generating it. And then, of course, we also have using feature control frame requirements or using true position axes. If you want to use those, that, of course, will be up to whether or not you need them, but those options are there. In my case, I'll just use the default location. Again, do note this is the PC-DMIS default in the public documents folder. You can see here we're in my version number and an Excel form report /results. And I'm going to stick with the default name because that suits me just fine in this case. So let's hit OK, create this, and that will put our Excel form command down here at the bottom of the program. Again, this will have an ID name in case you need it, but it will also have the type listed, and your results folder will be a variable listed here as well. So let's go ahead, give this a run, and get our report out of this. I'll have my trace fields to input here. I will leave them as default for now. Let this run through, and we'll get our data. In my case, because I checked the show report box in the settings, you can see it has popped up the Excel form report in the PC-DMIS Excel viewer. Notably, this is not Excel itself. This is the native viewer in PC-DMIS, so I will not be able to do anything Excel related from here, but I also don't need Excel on this computer to view this. Here we have all of the inputs from the data fields. You can see in my case, I have 8 dimensions and 8 axes in them. So we'll get our total here for 32 listed characteristics. and those are all reported there. In this case, of course, no deviations are listed because I don't have deviations, but there we have it. Now, of course, this is not the only way to use it. Obviously, AS9102 is very good if you are indeed doing an FAI, but you may want to run this with a custom Excel template. This is extremely useful if you would like to get your data out of PC-DMIS in a custom way that enables you to very easily either copy and paste to a form that you might need to fill out yourself, or to have PC-DMIS just pre-fill that form for you. Now, first off, requirements for doing this are having that form in the first place. I have whipped up a very simple Excel form here. Requirements for this are simply that we have all of the details we want in Excel first. When you load up the PC-DMIS Excel template tool here, you cannot make any modifications to the template except for adding the PC-DMIS characteristics and inputs into the template itself. So I cannot change the size of these boxes, add any text, add any images. So for our sake, we will have to get this template ahead of time in Excel, which I have done here. I've got a box for part name, serial number, and then of course a few things for the dimensions, just something nice and simple. If I am ready to use this form, I will have to go and make sure it is saved to the location that PC-DMIS is going to see these templates. In this case, again, this will be in your public documents folder by default where PC-DMIS gets installed. So I'm in my version under Excel form report and templates. And you can see here I have a number of templates listed already. So we'll just save our custom form 1 template. Now, if you take a look in this folder, something to note regarding these templates is they will not be saved alone as is. They will be saved with 2 associated files. Firstly, here is the Excel document that I made. You can see custom form 1 listed. But once I modify it in PC-DMIS, it will also have an associated XML file. This is what holds on to all of those input boxes and where the data populates on the Excel form report. So the Excel file on its own will not be enough. Fortunately, this XML file is automatically generated by PC-DMIS once we make these modifications in the template form tool in PC-DMIS. So I got my form in there, so let's go take a look at it in PC-DMIS. We'll switch over from our AS9102 and, oh, there we go, custom form 1. That's mine. I will select that. You can see I'm looking at it exactly as I had it saved from Excel. And again, I can't make any modifications other than dragging these inputs into their respective locations. But what do we need? We need the part name, so I can grab that. We have a trace field for it. We could also grab it from the part info from PC-DMIS. I'll grab the trace field in my case. And I'll do the same for part ID as the serial number. That should work just fine. Let's drag that in. Lovely. And then lastly, I have the data section where I want the data to populate. Now, very importantly, you will have to decide if you want your data to populate in columns or rows. You're only going to be able to have one of the two, so decide accordingly. And in my case, what do we want to have? We want to have a count of which dimension we're on. So I will put counter in the first column here. Dimension for me will be the dimension name because I like to have my dimension names. That will be PC-D-ID. We'll drag that into place here. And I want the nominal value, and upper tolerance for our positive, and lower tolerance for our minus tolerance. Then our measured value and deviation. And I neglected to have an out of tolerance column for my data, but of course that's the benefit of having my custom form, is I can put whatever I want in it. Now, if this is all I need for my data, if these are the only things I want to see, I'm ready to assign the data section of this template. And this is the very last thing you have to do. And it can simply be done by highlighting how you want it to populate data. In this case, I want it to be done row by row. And then simply right-click and set as data area. This will highlight yellow, and now when I use this template, PC-DMIS will know to start here and just work its way down, adding each dimension consecutively. You do not have to highlight all of the rows you want to use. You only need to highlight the first row or column correspondingly. And that should be enough to get my form working. So if I like that as is, when I hit OK, it will save this template now with its PC-DMIS inputs. And of course, if I go to our templates folder, I should have an XML file that corresponds to it. It will probably be built as soon as I run this. So I don't have one yet, but once we actually get to using it, we should have that populate. All right. Last few things on here. Report settings, I could put this to whichever folder I decide for the results if necessary and change the name as usual. In this case, maybe let's switch it over to a CSV file because I'd like it to be simpler, maybe just for fun. Say OK and save that. And on the subject of doing custom things with this, our results folder can, of course, be variableized because this is an input here in PC-DMIS. So while I could specify which folder I want it to print to, I have already assigned a results path folder here in PC-DMIS. And I've just done this with an assignment variable by using the get program info tool to find the file path to my current PC-DMIS program, and then simply adding a results folder onto that, which I have already made in PC-DMIS right here. So I am going to use this path variable instead here for my results folder. Variable with path name exists. Yes, it refers to that variable. So now when I run this, I should have my Excel template not only populate, but also it will be saved to that custom folder location based on my variable. There we have it. Again, this is a custom template, so any changes, if I decide that there's anything wrong with this, like maybe the spacing of these columns or rows, I will have to go in Excel, update the source template file, that Excel file, and then resave it into PC-DMIS's template folder. I'm not able to go and modify it from the viewer here or from inside of PC-DMIS. But as you can see, we've got our data populated just as I wanted there. Lovely.